Time now for the 10-minute war, and for that we bring in our good friend and the perhaps one and only reasonable Ohio State fan. That is Mark Rogers, who has a spectacular college football page as well right here on YouTube, the voice of college football. Good to see you, Mark. How you been, brother?
Good to see you, Steve. I enjoyed that Michigan spring game.
So did the rest of us. I mean, I'm ecstatic that it wasn't on. I mean, I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. Don't get me wrong. I mean, and the idea that there is some competitive advantage. I guess we're beating Bama this year because they put theirs on, right? I mean, it's just dumb. But I looked at it as an act of mercy, Mark. You know, I thought this was one of maybe the only time ever that the pusher comes to you as the junkie and says, I can't sell you anymore. And so I felt like we were getting put out of our misery, that the program was just like, we've lied to you the last 5 off seasons. We can't do that this year. And so the only way to win the game is not to play. Deny the Fire Rakes oxygen, show you no spring whatsoever, no delusions of grandeur, let alone adequacy, and enjoy your spring and summer. And you can wait until September before we curb stomp your scrot. Your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I don't really think it much matters. I think all the spring games are pretty ugly. I get hyped up. I get a bit duped by just missing college football so much that I say, oh, wow, the Clemson spring game's on today. And then I watch 3 or 4 plays and realize it's a glorified scrimmage, if that. And it's really not made for the consumer. It's made for the coaches to make their evaluations and develop players. And they just happen to invite the TV cameras for that one particular scrimmage. So it is what it is. And if you watch the Ohio State one, it's even less football because they don't even tackle, which, again, is for viewing purposes awful. But for their intent, it's for them. It's not for the consumer.
Remember how terrible Justin Fields was at the Ohio State spring game his first year?
4 for 13.
Yeah, then he went out in the fall and he threw, 40 touchdowns and 1 interception or something? Right? I mean, it's just... Okay, moving on. What are your thoughts on some of what I shared at the top? I want to get your take on not just Michigan, but the Big Ten post-spring collectively. So I shared what I thought were some of the big questions surrounding Michigan football coming out of the spring. I mean, what are some of the questions that you have? And maybe they're the same ones.
Let's go Michigan first. Okay, J.J. McCarthy, I know that he's not the starter, and I'm a bit surprised that Jim Harbaugh said that Cade McNamara is the starter. Now,
it was Matt Weiss, the new quote-unquote quarterbacks coach, who said that, not Harbaugh, but I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That anybody would be named the starter. But again, I don't think it's a big deal. Now, we know that great players are made when nobody's watching. So what is J.J. McCarthy in particular going to do between now and the beginning of August camp? We know that he's going to work out. He's going to do all the things that are expected of him. But is he really going to press toward this job? Is he going to be asking those questions of the coaches? Is he going to build relationships with the receivers in particular and the offensive line? Is he going to work extra with them? Is he going to do all the things and really study the playbook and the tape to get better? Is the coaching staff that we know is unfamiliar with each other, unfamiliar with their roles? We know that coaches grind. That's what they do. But are they going to grind in a different way, in a smart way? There's working and there's working smart. Are they going to build that cohesiveness as a staff to be better as a unit than they would have been in the spring, which there couldn't be much expected of them as a coaching staff, as a unit, because of all the unfamiliar faces in different places. So what are they going to do? Again, I'm weighing the defense in my mind, the scheme that could be improved under Mike Macdonald versus what we had under Don Brown, versus quality competition, versus the losses, McGrone and Pay, and let's see, Carlo Kemp. And I don't see where the personnel is going to be better, but maybe with the scheme adjustments and Mike Macdonald being better schematically, maybe they're better on defense. And again, we've talked this a number of times, Steve. I bring it up. Game changer on offense. Ronnie Bell's really good. I love Ronnie Bell, productive #1 receiver, but not a game changer. And I know that we've talked about it, and you bring up guys that are supposed to be that guy, but I still have to see it. and Xavier Worthy said goodbye, and he was the best candidate to be that guy.
What I think is going to be important about this season from a fan perspective is when you look at the roster, there are, and you and I have talked about this in the past, there's a litany of highly recruited players on this roster that have not done anything yet in a Michigan uniform. Now, in a lot of cases, they've not been asked to, right? But still, there's a lot. I mean, this is a recruiting profile all-star team, but other than, Aiden Hutchinson and a couple of other guys, I can't think of anybody that I think right now would be a surefire first team all Big Ten team, when I do my own college football preview later this year. Then you throw in all of the new coaches. This is really, to me, a referendum and reckoning on Jim Harbaugh's program from a coaching perspective. Because I think that you and I would also agree that there's enough of those players on this team that we could probably name 4 or 5 coaches right now that we think could potentially be coaching at Michigan next year, that if they had this raw material to start with, could probably get 8 to 10 wins out of this team, somewhere in there, with the establishment of culture, player development, those sorts of things. So if they can't do that with this team, if you're looking at losing to Michigan State and Mel Tucker another year, you're going to lose after never losing to Indiana for 40 years. You lose to them for a second year in a row, right? Those are the games that are going to decide. You can lose to both Penn State and Ohio State and still get to 8 to 10 wins. Washington is early in the year. That's a team that won the Pac-12 North last year, but it went 3-1. It has a lot of question marks too, and still kind of a rookie coach in Jimmy Lake because there wasn't much of an offseason last year. I guess my point is there's a lot of winnable games on this schedule for a coaching staff that knows how to mold this raw material into a team. And then there's a lot of those kinds of games, though, that are very losable for a coaching staff that doesn't. I really think this year, because of the makeup of the roster, it really is a reckoning on whether Jim Harbaugh, they've made every change. They've swapped out coordinators on both sides in the last couple of years. Now they've done the Brian Kelly 2016 reboot. Hell, we just threw out our recruiting coordinator last week and are bringing in a new guy. That's exactly what Kelly did after the 4-8 of 2016. So if it doesn't work this fall, if they can't at least get to 8 wins, then I think that is your sure verdict. Now I'm already there. I think he should have been let go last year, but there's no way around that reckoning, I think, this year. I think you get it one way or the other, Mark.
Steve, I also think that we're entering a time between the end of spring practice and the beginning of August camp that's going to possibly have more activity than at any time in college football history for 2 reasons. Number one, the dead period is going to end at the end of May, right. And I know that this doesn't affect this football season, but as we go forward, of course, this program – and so I don't have this statistically confirmed, but there should be less commits to date than there typically are in a college football calendar. Therefore, once the campuses are open on June 1st, all these schools are announcing these big weekends that they're having in June that they would have had earlier. So there are going to be more players, and currently are on the table, to be committed to a school than ever before. So we're going to see more recruiting activity in the early summer than we ever have, number one. Number two, because of this transfer portal that was humming for the 6 weeks after the season that's died down, I wouldn't be surprised if it churns back up, because now that we're through spring practice, again, a lot of teams are going to play this weekend and then a few the first weekend of May. Guys are going to assess their situations
you're going to know where
and
you're
think,
at.
Okay,
right.
I thought I was in better shape on this depth chart a month ago, but apparently I'm not. So I'm going to weigh my options and possibly leave. So this transfer portal may start churning here in the next 6 weeks as well.
Those are good points. Let's look at the Big Ten now as a whole coming out of spring practice. What are some of the key questions around the conference that you're taking a look at?
I'm going to start obvious with Ohio State, the 3-man quarterback battle. Kyle McCord's got the best arm talent. He's the quarterback out of Philadelphia. But C.J. Stroud's the best prepared. Now, everybody focuses on the spring game, and that's what we get to see. But let's not overemphasize the spring game because, again, it's one of 15 sessions. It's one of about 3 to 4 scrimmages. We just get to watch that one. But if that's any indication, Stroud's the guy for the job right now. And I think Ryan Day I'm conjecturing that he doesn't know who his guy is. I'm sure he favors one, but Stroud seems to be the guy that's best in charge of the offense and has both the run and the pass covered to be a capable Ohio State quarterback. But Steve, the quarterback competition that I'm going to enjoy is not within one team. It's trying to determine who is going to come out of the Western Division between Iowa and Wisconsin, because I think a lot of people that didn't necessarily follow Wisconsin football through the season, we were all taken aback by the Graham Mertz off the Jack Cohn injury. He comes in 20 for 21, 5 touchdown passes that first game against Illinois. He's a 5-star. Wisconsin finally has a dynamic quarterback, and he's set. He's the guy. Spencer Petras on the other side at Iowa played a poor couple games, and he got better. And if anything, Mertz, after that first game, 2 touchdowns and 5 picks, sub 60% the rest of the season. Spencer Petras outplayed him head-to-head, played much better down the stretch. Iowa won that game 28-7. So where Graham Mertz has the name, Iowa, Wisconsin at quarterback could be advantage Iowa, which is a bit unexpected. So, and also Wisconsin more unsettled at running back than they typically are. They usually have the Monte Ball, Melvin Gordon type back there, but Garrett Groshek and Nakia Watson both left. Jalen Berger's an exceptional talent. Michigan fans may remember him.
He's a big-time recruit for them.
Yeah, 85, 90 yards against you guys last year. He missed a lot of spring because of a leg injury. I don't think it's serious. But Wisconsin thin at running back, and Mertz didn't show capable of shouldering the load as that dynamic guy that we've never seen a quarterback other than Russell Wilson for one season at Wisconsin. So I like that quarterback comparison in the Big Ten Western Division. So that would be one spot to go.
I think the West is fascinating. You've got Jeff Brom there, who came in with so much fanfare, turned down the alma mater because he thought he was really building something at Purdue. They've hit a wall there. He may be coaching for his job this fall, and they've got a lot of guys back. It's just not a lot of them are impact players. You take a look at Illinois. I'm fascinated by Illinois. And I wonder if we are overlooking them. They were, remember, a bowl team 2 years ago. Now, keep in mind that they were second in the nation 2 years ago in non-offensive touchdowns. So, I mean, analytically, that was kind of a fluky 6 wins they got to. But you've got a 6th-year senior there at quarterback and Brandon Peters, who's seen it all, kind of comfortable in his own skin, knows what he is, knows what he isn't. They've still got several high-impact transfers there. You know, you got Luke Ford coming in, the transfer now, who's eligible at tight end. And you bring in a coach that has had as much success coaching in the Big Ten West as anybody has in the history of the Big Ten West, and Brett Bielema. And he comes in, I'm guessing he's always got some swag and chip on the shoulder. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy from a resume standpoint that has a better resume than a lot of guys that have gotten hired at jobs over him in the last few years. And he's made it no secret after what happened at Arkansas, he wanted to get back in the game. You know Brett Bielema is coming in here with maximum ego. And a lot of these guys were in a bowl game 2 years ago. It's not a culture starting from nothing, right? And you look across the landscape of that division, I don't see a team right now I think is the definitive favorite, the team that we know is the top 10 team, and then after that, who knows? I just kind of think this division's wide open, and I think we're maybe, I mean, look what Northwestern did, okay? They went from 1-8, they went 8-1, and then 1-8, and then back to first place in the division again. I wonder if we're overlooking Illinois and Brett Bielema in year one, where maybe year 2 or 3, where some of the seniors on this team graduate, and then the recruiting weakness, kind of you hit a lull there in the roster. But maybe this year, with the amount of guys they're bringing back, and the fact that a lot of them won games 2 years ago, maybe the timing is right for him to make a little, at least some form of a splash.
I had the Illinois spring game on last night just to hear Brett Bielema talk. I love having Brett Bielema back in the Big Ten. He's going to say something throughout the season, whether it's leading into a game or the post-game news conference. He's going to say some things that are just going to be fun to hear. He's just that kind of engaging, charismatic type. He also says that he learned from his stint in the NFL with the Giants and Patriots that he had to combine the old school, that he so much loves versus the way to do it now. And we'll see if that plays out on the field. But I love having Brett Bielema back. And I think that people would be a bit surprised to know, because college football seems as though the structure is so stagnant in terms of the power structure, that I've run the numbers a few years, Steve, in regards to how many teams either improve or decline by at least 3 games in a college football season. And you'd be surprised how many across the landscape of the Power 5, because it seems like, a handful. But it's been between 19 and 23. Not looking at this season is going to be difficult to judge because, of course, of the truncated season. Right. You can't compare records. But in the 3 previous seasons, 4 to 5 teams in the Big Ten either increase or decrease their win total by at least 3, and maybe Illinois is a candidate.
Another team that I think will be fascinating. Well, I think the entire division is fascinating. Is it a make or break year for Scott Frost?
I don't think it's a make or break year necessarily, but I think the next season will be the make or break year. I think he's going to get a bit of a pass coming off 2020, but I just felt as though he was the perfect guy for the job for all the reasons that we've cited in the past. And he's recruited well. Adrian Martinez is going to be the guy at quarterback once again. They bring in Marquise Stepp from USC. Otherwise, they have a void at running back. They lost Wan'Dale Robinson, one of the premier playmakers.
See,
in the
that's
division.
the issue. What have they had? 3 or 4 top 25 classes in a row there? He can't. This is the problem we're having here at the old Block M. He can't retain guys. You know, Michigan, I think, is 8th of an all Power 5 teams of transfers in the last 4 or 5 years. And like most of the other programs around us have had coaching changes, which is the number one reason guys go to the transfer portal. He's struggling to retain players. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, the name you just mentioned, that's not the only example. But he's the most glaring one because he was an established star on the team. They just took his ball and went home. That's one thing. I mean, they come in through the outdoor there in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's having a hard time keeping that culture together.
I wasn't necessarily concerned with that for the first year and a half, because you figure, okay,
yeah, a lot of it's the dead weight from the old staff, right?
Yeah, get rid of the dead weight, get rid of the guys.
But it's continued with his own guys now. That's the issue.
It has continued.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark, great stuff as always, man. Always appreciate talking to you, and we'll do it again soon. All right, take care.
Thanks so much, Steve.
You bet.